All right. Today we are going to talk a little bit on the boundaries of the ocean. Um, if you look at this slide, right, looks a little bit complicated, but we'll try to figure out actually what these are. Right. So actually, we can divide the ocean or the different areas in the ocean in different ways. As you can see here, is very much a physical zonation. So physically, how we can divide the different areas in the ocean, right? So for this physical zonation, we can use different aspects like distance from the coast. As you can see here, the distance from the coast, uh, we can call this as the neritic zone, the oceanic zone, right? Or otherwise, in simple terms, we can say it's a near shore and the offshore likewise, right? So don't get confused. I'll explain these what they are, right? And the second one is the location in the water body. Like if you look at in the water body, right, in the different areas in the water body, you can divide again, like in the benthic, or whether it's in the water column or we call pelagic, right? If anything to do with the water body, we call the pelagic, and the if it is in the bottom, we call the benthic, right? For example, if animals are in the water column, then we call them, they are in the pelagic environment. And if they are in the bottom, they are benthic, right? Likewise, based on the location in the water body, we can subdivide, right? And the third one is based on the depth, right? From the surface, based on the depth, again, we can divide the ocean into different areas. As you can see here, it's called the epipelagic, mesopelagic, right? Those, again, all these are in the pelagic environment. We can divide them into different areas based on the depth, right? I'll come to these things later on. And the fourth one is the light penetration. The how much light is passed through the ocean or the water column. Based on that, again, we can divide the ocean. Like on your right, there's a small graph showing at least 3 different zones based on light penetration. Right, the top layer, its depth is here. Right, so keep in mind that these depths are actually just an average value. Right, it's depend on which ocean, right, where you are in the world. It's all depend on like how much sediments are there. There are so many factors, right? These are just an average. Like up to 100 meters, that area we call well lit area, or otherwise called the photic zone. Photic zone, prakasa kalape කියලා කියනවා. That's this area get enough sunlight, right? That sunlight enough for the photosynthesis. So that area is the photic zone. Okay, so the next level or the next layer is called the dysphotic zone, or in general terms we call twilight area, right? Twilight. I hope you have heard this word twilight, right? There is a very famous novel on this name called Twilight, right? කියවලා තියෙනේද Twilight? Right. There is some light, but it's not totally dark, but some light. But the difference is that light is not enough for photosynthesis. මේ හරිය light තියෙනවා, හැබැයි ඒ light එක මදි ප්‍රභා සංශ්ලේෂණය සඳහා. So that area we call twilight area. And the area below the twilight area is called dark area, right? Or otherwise in simple terms we call the midnight area, right? Midnight area or dark area. Scientifically we call the aphotic zone, aphotic, A40 there's no sunlight at all, right? So this area is total darkness throughout the day, throughout the year, every day it's under total darkness, right? So that's the um, 3 light zones, right? And these are actually on the left we call biozones, right? Actually, this zonation is based on where where do the animals live, right? In which areas in the ocean do the animals live? Based on that, actually these are subdivided. That's why called biozones, whether they are pelagic or whether they are benthic, likewise, right? So just looking at you see it's a bit complicated. I mean, but take it easy. I mean, you don't have to memorize these things. You just need to get an idea. And you look at the depths again, right? Up to 200 is called the epipelagic, up to 1000 mesopelagic, up to 2000, right? Bathypelagic. Likewise, up to 4000 is a basopelagic, right? Anything below the here 6000 is called the hadal pelagic, right? Hadal pelagic means actually something like trenches. අහලා තියෙනවනේ trenches නේද? අගාධ කියලා කියන්නේ මරියානා trench වගේ අගාධ තියෙන ඒවා තමයි මේ hadal pelagic කියලා කියන්නේ. They are very deep places on earth, right? So the water column again, and this is the bottom of the sea, where we call the benthic environment. Benthic environment can be divided as like a littoral, sublittoral, bathyal, abyssal, and hadal, like that, right? So that's whole benthic environment, and this is the water column or the pelagic environment, right? So I hope you have some idea about the water column as well as the benthic environment, right? So there is another thing, as I mentioned before, the from the distance, right? Distance from the shore, right? It's called the neritic zone and the oceanic zone. So neritic zone is actually, you can see usually a profile of the ocean, right? The depth increase very slowly or gradually. You can see here after a certain point the depth increase very sharp, like here, right? And right, very sharp increase here, the benthic one, and so that is this point up to here we call the continental shelf. මුල අහලා තියෙන නේද මහද්වීපික තටාකය කියලා එකක්, right? මහද්වීපික තටාකය or continental shelf. මෙන්න මේ edge එක දක්වා මෙන්න මේ area එක තමයි continental shelf කියලා කියන්නේ. එතනින් එහාට තමයි මේ offshore, එහෙම නැත්නම් අපි ගැඹුරු මුහුද කියලා කියන්නේ මෙන්න මෙතනින් මෙහාට. හරි? හරි. දැන් තේරුම් නැත්නම් කමන්නේ ඕන ප්‍රශ්නයක් තියෙනවා අහන්න පුළුවන්. හැබැයි අපි මේවා ගැන ඉස්සරහට details කතා කරනවා. එතකොට ඔයගොල්ලන්ට තව ටිකක් තේරෙයි. All right. Right. So that's how we can divide the ocean basically based on physical zonation, right? Anit zonation තමයි අපි කියනවා politically බෙදන zonation. ඒක කිසිම අපිට අඳුන ගන්න බෑ, කොහේ හරි lines නැහැ, වෙන් කරලා ගන්න තැනක් නැහැ. හැබැයි අපි එක නීති දාලා එහෙම නැත්නම් මිනිස්සු අපිට ඕන විදිහට බෙදා ගන්න එකක්, right? So the second type of zonation, this also actually related to the previous zonation. You can see the different light zones, right? The photic zone, the twilight area, and the other midnight area, or the total darkness. And you can see here the trenches, or the what we call the hadal zone or the hadal pelagic zone, right? Right. So the other classification actually is called the political zonation, right? Based on international and national laws, or regulations, we can divide the ocean into different areas, right? So that's the political zonation. So one of the such international convention is called UNCLOS, right? Or United Nations Convention on Law of the Sea. Right? It's a long name, right? United Nations Convention on Law of the Sea. අපි කියනවා එක්සත් ජාතීන්ගේ සාගර ප්‍රඥප්තිය කියලා. Right? එක්සත් ජාතීන්ගේ සාගර ප්‍රඥප්තිය. This is the international law related to the maritime zonation. Right. And I'll come to that one later on. And there are other zonations like in the coastal zone. Right? The coastal zone, according to the Coast Conservation Act. Right? අපේ රටේ තියෙන Coast Conservation Act කියලා එකක් තියෙනවා. පෙරර ආරක්ෂක පනතක් තියෙනවා. අනේ පනතට අනුව මුහුදේ එක එක areas බෙදන්න පුළුවන්. ඒකට කියනවා අපි coastal zone එක කියලා. I'll come to these things later on. Right. So okay, we'll go through each and every aspects again, right? So as you can see here, the general terms, not very scientific, but we can divide different areas in general terms, like what is the coast, the beach, right? And we call the foreshore, right? And near shore, offshore, right? And this is the shoreline. අපි shoreline එක කියලා කියන හරියටම වතුරයි ගොඩ බිමයි වෙන් වෙන තැන. ඒක shoreline එක කියලා කියනවා. හැබැයි මේ shoreline කියන එක ඔයගොල්ලන්ට තේරෙනවා ඇති. ඒක permanent එකක් නෙමෙයි. හරි? low tide එකට මේක පල්ලෙහාට යනවා, high tide එකට උඩ යනවා. ඒ නිසා මේ දෙක අතර තමයි හැම වෙලාවෙම වෙනස් වෙනවා මේ shoreline කියන එක. ඒක නිසා අපි සාමාන්‍යයෙන් මැප් එකේම අඳින්නේ line එක ඇත්තටම ඒකේ මැද. හරි? නැත්නම් ලංකාව වටේ ඉර අපේ මාජින් එක හැම වෙලාවෙම වෙනස් කරන්න වෙනවා. දවසේ එක එක වෙලාවට වෙනස් කරන්න වෙනවා. So we take the mean as the mean shoreline, right? So that change all the time, right? And at the same time, you might heard about something called the low tide and high tide. Right? The low tide, during the low tide, the shoreline will be extended to the shore, to the sea, and during the high tide, it's come back a little bit more landward, right? So then the beach, or what we call the shore, right? And accordingly, that based on the tide, it changed, right? You can understand that. And the near shore environment, usually we call up to the edge of the continental shelf, right? That area we call the near shore, right? As you can see that there is no, these are not very scientific classification. Near shore, we just to say that close to the shore, we call this near shore, right? Anything beyond, we call the offshore, right? So usually the edge of the continental shelf is somewhere 60 meters or 200 feet, right? Continental shelf එක edge එක හුඟක් වෙලාවට අපි කියන්නේ 60 meters විතර. හැබැයි මේක මේ ඔක්කොම වෙනස් වෙනවා තැනින් තැනට, right? In average, right? So that is the very simple classification, right? But as we talked before, the biozones, right? I don't want to repeat again. So we can divide them into the benthic environment. It can be divided as littoral zone, the sublittoral, the bathyal zone, the basal zone, and headal zone. Likewise, the benthic environment we can divide. And the water column, again, epipelagic, mesopelagic, lithypelagic, ebisopelagic, and headal pelagic. Likewise, we can divide, right? These are just named to give different dates, but right? So you don't have to remember these things, right? I never ask you to It's kind of memorize these things, but you just need that there is some classification like that, right? And on your left side, you can see the different light zones, as I mentioned before. You can read a little bit more if you want to learn a little bit more about these different zones, right? So that is right. And the other zonation that I talk about, it's the political zonation. From that political zonation actually came from the international law, as I mentioned before, is the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. You take the first letters, then it's become UNCLOS, right? UNCLOS, right? UNCL. We don't consider on the, but take the other words, then the abbreviation use is UNCLOS, right? Right. Based on that UNCLOS, we can recognize different areas in the sea as internal waters. Like here, the internal waters are the areas, the projected from sea to the land. මුහුදේ ඉඳලා ගඩොබිම පැත්තට ප්‍රොජෙක්ට් වෙත් එහෙම නැත්නම් ඇතුළට නිරාගිය කැලි කොටස් අපි කියනවා internal waters කියලා. දැන් මේ වගේ estuary එකක් එහෙම නැත්නම් bay එකක් port එකක් වෙන්න පුළුවන් මොනවා හරි මුහුදෙන් රට ඇතුළට ගිහිලා තියෙන එක නේ ඒවට කියන්නේ internal waters කියලා. ඒ කියන්නේ මුහුද රට ඇතුළට ගිය තැන් තමයි internal waters කියලා කියන්නේ, right? Then the next area called the territorial waters, right? Territory එකක් කියන එක අහලා තියෙනවනේ නේ සතෙක් ගිහිම territory එකක් තියෙනවා. දැන් ඒගොල්ලන්ට තමන්ගෙම කියන area එක, right? එතකොට අපිටත් ඒ වගේ territory එකක් තියෙනවා. That one we call the territorial waters, right? So this territorial waters, everything on land, right? All the rules and regulation on land is applied to this territorial waters. I'll come to that one later on. So that territorial waters, from the latest law, it go up to 12 nautical miles, right? හැම වෙලාවෙම මේ මුහුදට සම්බන්ධ ඒවාද කියන්නේ nautical miles වලින් නාවික සත්තුන් වලින්. So 12 nautical miles from the low tide level, right? Low tide එකේ ඉඳලා 12 nautical miles යනකම් ඒ area එක අපි කියනවා territorial seal. Same national law applies within that area, right? And beyond that 12 nautical miles, there is another 12 nautical miles called contiguous zone. Contiguous zone, අපි කියනවා යාබද කලාපය කියලා. It's like a buffer zone, right? Another 12 nautical miles from the territorial seas, right? And from the territorial seas, like from the 12 nautical miles, another 200 miles, 200 nautical miles, that area we call the exclusive economic zone. මේ මේක ඇත්තට මේ පෙන්ලා තියෙනවා වැරදි මේ මේක වෙන්න ඕනේ මේ territorial sea එකේ ඉඳලා තමයි කිලෝමීටර් nautical miles 200ක් මුහුද පැත්තට මේ area එක කියනවා අනන්‍ය ආර්ථික කලාපය නැත්නම් exclusive economic zone, right? And the other one is the continental shelf. මම අර කලින් කිව්වා වගේ අර වේගයෙන් ගැඹුර වෙනස් වෙන ස්ලෝප් එක වෙනස් වෙන වේගයෙන් ඒ දක්වා area එක අපි කියනවා continental shelf කියලා. එතනින් හාට ඔක්කොම අපි කියනවා high seas කියලා, right? So this definition come from that law of the sea නැත්නම් එක්සත් ජාතීන්ගේ සාගර ප්‍රඥප්තියට අනුව, right? All right. It's a bit complicated, right? But I know, but eventually we learn these things, and when you're familiar with these things, right? So how this international law came into effect, right? international law or the law of the sea treaty, right? Or United Nations Convention of the Law of the Sea, right? In short, we call it LOS or the law of the sea, right? Since it's very long, we call the LOS or the law of the sea, Sagar Pratnyapti kiyala, right? So that actually before this UNCLOS came into effect, all the countries had only 3 miles, 3 nautical mile territorial sea. Right? අපිට ඊට කලින් තිබුණේ 3 nautical miles. ඒ කියන්නේ 5.7 kilometer නා. Right? How they decide actually this 3 nautical miles, right? මේ පැත්තේ තියෙනවානේ මේ පොඩි කාටුන් එකක් නැදලානේ. හරි. මේ කාටුන් එකකින් පෙන්නනවා මේ ඒ දවස්වල තිබුණු heavy weapon එක තමයි මේ artilleries. හරි. missiles තිබුණේ නැහැ. artillery එකකින් ගහන්න පුළුවන් උඩරිම දුර තිබුණේ 3 miles, 3 nautical miles. ඒක තමයි ඇත්තටම ගත්තේ. ඒ කියන්නේ වෙන රටකට ගිහිල්ලා තව රටක් ආක්‍රමණය කරන්න බැරි වෙන්න මේ 3 nautical mile limit එකක් තියලා තිබුණා. මොකද ඒ රටට ගහන්න බෑ, ගැහුවත් වදින්නේ බීච් එකකින් නවතිනවා මේ. හරි. මැක්සිමම් තිබෙන එක. ඒක නිසා තමයි මුලදී ඔය 3 nautical mile කියන තිබුණා. හැබැයි පස්සේ කාලෙක මේවා මේ වෙනස් වුණා. මම කලින් කිව්වා වගේ මේ 3 nautical miles කියන එක වැඩි කරා 12 nautical miles දක්වා. හරි. ඒතකොට දැන් ඉෆෙක්ට් වෙන්නේ මේ විදිහට තමයි 12 nautical miles territorial sea එකක් තියෙනවා. එතනින් එහාට තව 12 nautical miles තියෙනවා contiguous zone කියලා එකක්. ඒක මම වගේ buffer zone එකක්. ඒකට කිසි විශේෂත්වයක් නැහැ. හැබැයි අර territorial sea එකේ ඉඳලා තව 200 nautical miles or otherwise 370 kilometers, that area we call the exclusive economic zone or Ananya Arthika Kalape කියලා. That right? So that's how the different zones, right, based on the UNCLOS or the law of the sea treaty, right? Internal waters, territorial sea, the contiguous zone, the exclusive economic zone, the continental shelf, and high seas or the international waters, the beyond the continental shelf, or not really, the beyond 200 nautical miles, that area called the high seas or international waters, right? So that's how the international law work, right? And other than that, there's the international seabed, that the bottom of the sea under the international waters is called the international seabed, right?
In October 2015, Russian ships and submarines operated near undersea data cables, sparking fears that Russia may intentionally cut or wiretap the world's communication lines. Data cables are protected by international law, but what happens out on the high seas is a legally complicated jurisdiction. So we wanted to know, what are international waters and who exactly is in charge? Well, simply put, international waters are bodies of water that are outside a country's territorial waters, which extend 12 nautical miles from its coast. Within territorial waters, nations have full sovereignty, both above and below the surface. There is also an exclusive economic zone that extends 200 nautical miles out from the shore. But the EEZ only applies sovereign rights to what lies below the surface, like oil or minerals. After 12 miles, anyone can sail through a country's exclusive economic zone, but they can't drill for oil or fish. In fact, the freedom to navigate international waters is one of several freedoms guaranteed by the United Nations Convention on the Laws of the Sea. All countries are allowed to fly over, lay cables, build islands, fish, and perform scientific research in international waters. Of course, that's not to say that you can do anything in international waters. First and foremost, whatever is being done on the high seas falls under the jurisdiction of the country the ship is registered in. But what if the country in question is unable or refuses to prosecute criminal activity, such as Somalian piracy? Well, that's when the concept of universal jurisdiction applies. Universal jurisdiction allows for any country to prosecute a criminal regardless of their nationality or where the crime was committed. Although usually this concept is used for crimes against humanity, like genocide, it's useful in international waters because otherwise nobody could claim jurisdiction. Recent efforts against Somalian piracy have been primarily led by the United States, but also involve China, Russia, France, and the UK, as well as the EU and NATO. In fact, this policing of international waters marks the first time the UN Security Council has worked on the same side since World War II. But what counts as international waters isn't always clear-cut. The nautical areas surrounding the Arctic as well as Antarctica are disputed, as multiple countries have claimed sovereignty over the land itself. Perhaps the most tense conflict is in the South China Sea. China lays claim to a number of islands, and by proxy also polices the surrounding waters. But neighboring states like Taiwan, Vietnam, and the Philippines say that China's claims overlap their own territory. Meanwhile, international countries, like the United States, maintain that a large portion of the South China Sea constitutes international waters. The US has even sent ships into what China claims as its own territory. This dispute is considered one of the most volatile in the Asian region. International waters are incredibly important for trade and communication, and are generally protected against unlawful activity. Although it may seem like you can just take a boat 12 miles off the coast and do whatever you want, that's far from the case. Historically, countries have claimed dominion over all the world's oceans. But today, the high seas are free for all. Despite how much water there is in the world, it's actually a fiercely fought over resource.
I hope you got some idea about this, what is called the International Maritime Conventions, or the maritime law, why it is so important. I'm pretty sure that you have some idea, because with the recent the ship incident called the Express Pearl incident, a lot of people talk about these things, right? You remember that this happened somewhere 9.5 nautical miles from the shore, right? Now you know that this happened within our territorial waters, right? So that's why this the concepts are very important, right? So this happened within our territorial sea. So territorial sea, as I mentioned before, it's totally under the national jurisdiction or the national law. Everything on land apply on within that 12 nautical miles. Right? So actually like though we have the airports or the customs on land, but actually you have to check someone 12 nautical miles away from the shore, right, for their at the arrival, right? But it's basically you can't do it. That's why you check them in the within the airports, right? So in reality, you have to check 12 nautical miles before that, right? All right. So you see now the territorial sea, all the everything apply on land is apply on the related to law, right? Both below the surface and above, right? තේරුණා නේද? ඒ කියන්නේ මේ continental shelf, sorry, the territorial sea එකේදී මුහුද යට වගේම උඩ, ඒ කියන්නේ එයාස් ඉඳලම කිසිම රටකට කිසිම කෙනෙකුට ඇතුල් වෙන්න බෑ මේ එයා ස්ට්‍රිප් එකටවත් මේ ඒ රටේ නීතිය තියෙන. හැබැයි එතනින් එහාට ඔය exclusive economic zone කියන එක, right, that's belong the only below the surface, right? කිසිම වෙලාවට ඒක apply වෙන්නේ නැහැ එයා වලට. ඒ කියන්නේ මුහුදෙන් උඩට අදාළ නැහැ. exclusive economic zone එක අදාළ වෙන්නේ වතුර මට්ටමින් පල්ලෙහාට විතරයි, right? So anything in the like a fish and all the resources in the sea belong to that country up to 200 nautical miles, but not the airspace, right? So free මේවා හදලා තියෙන ඇත්තටම ජාත්‍යන්තර නැත්තම් flight plane වලට එහෙම යන්න විදිහක් නැහැ. අපි හිතමු රටවල් අතර ළඟ රටවල් එක්ක තරහයි නම් ඒ රටවල් හරහා යන්න විදිහක් නැහැ. ඒක නිසා තමයි ඉන්ටර්නැෂනල් ලෝ හදලා තියෙන්නේ. ඕනම කෙනෙකුට නැව් වලින් යන්න පුළුවන් මේ exclusive economic zone එක ඇතුළෙත්. හැබැයි ඒකේ තියෙන resources පාවිච්චි කරන්න බැරි එකයි වෙන්නේ. හරි, මම හිතනවා පැහැදිලි කියලා. As I mentioned, so this is bit complicated. Well, you just need to have a basic idea about and why it is important, right, for us, right? So again, if you have any questions, we can discuss later on. And the more important is like in the bottom map of the world, you see these dark blue areas, right? These dark blue areas actually is called the international waters, or called the high seas, or the most common that we use is the common heritage of mankind, right? Common heritage of mankind, because that's the only area that we all own, right? There is no particular owner for these areas. It's a common area for everybody. අනිත් ඒවා අපි ඔක්කොම බෙදාගෙන ඉන්නේ. ඉතිරි මේ ටික විතරයි අත්‍තරම අපේ common areas විදිහට තියෙන ලෝකේ, right? All right, hope you got some idea from that, right? Now I don't want to repeat this thing. I have some text on this just for you to read, and then I will share this slide where you can read, right? So keep in mind again the internal waters, the territorial waters or territorial sea, the contiguous zone, then the exclusive economic zone, and beyond that we have the international waters or the high seas, right? Which is earlier it was beyond 12 nautical miles, but as you know, now it is beyond 200 nautical miles. That area is actually called the international waters or the common heritage of mankind, right? All right, so if we apply that concept into Sri Lanka, this is how you can see, right? And this is Sri Lanka, and the sort of a gray area right next to the country is the territorial sea. You see that's the territorial sea here, and there's another 12 nautical miles, the contiguous zone, right? And we have very large this area, what we call the exclusive economic zone. And in these areas we have no any issue because there is no any countries around, but right at the end this area overlap with the Maldives, right? But it's right at the edge, it's with the Maldives, but we have a big problem with India because the area between Sri Lanka and India, there is no 400 nautical miles, right? The making theater, we need to have 400 nautical miles. Sri Lanka should have 200 nautical miles. India should have 200 nautical miles, which means need to have a 400 nautical miles strip, but we don't have that distance. So what happened in this case, when there is no enough distance, then we need to have a different agreement between the neighboring countries to establish this the line, the boundary line, right? So that's how and this is the boundary between Sri Lanka and India, as you can from this left image. This came from the original agreement that signed between Sri Lanka and India in 1974, right? Well before you all born, right? And this agreement was between the Premier or the Prime Minister of Sri Lanka, Sirimao Bandaranaike, and the Premier of India, by that time was Indira Gandhi. These two leaders, both lady leaders, right, women leaders, they signed this agreement in 1974, and based on that agreement, we have the boundary between Sri Lanka and India. Now, you know, the earlier, some of the areas like here, I don't know whether you have heard about something like there's a island called Katchatiu, right? අර තියෙනවනේ Katchatiu දූපත කියලා. මේ Katchatiu දූපත, the Katchatiu island, actually before this agreement the Kachativu island was belonged to India, but after this agreement, that Kachativu islands belong to Sri Lanka now. Similarly, there was a big area in here in the northernmost area. There was a big area for Sri Lanka, but we lost that area to India based on the agreement, right? Now, you know, there is a lot of complaint from the Indian, especially from the fishermen, right? They're coming to Sri Lankan waters. They claim that this area was their traditional lands where they were fishing, and now the Sri Lanka has taken over, right? අහලා තියෙනවනේ ලංකාව ඉන්දියා අතර මේ ෆිෂින් වලට එහෙම සමහර පොඩි නෙමෙයි විශාල ගැටුම් තියෙනවා. මේ ඉන්දියන් ෆිෂර්මන්ලා ලංකාවේ මොහොතට එනවා. මේගොල්ලෝ කියන්නේ ඉතිහාසයේ මේගොල්ලෝගේ ඒරියාස් කියලා. But you know, this is now international agreement. No one can breach that unless you sign another agreement, right? All right, so that's the concept of international boundaries, so the ocean boundaries when you apply to Sri Lanka. Now you look at the land area for Sri Lanka. There is some figures in this map, you know, different areas, different places have different figures, right? Land area for Sri Lanka, usually we heard that is 65,610 square millimeters. If you check 10 places, it will have different values, but this is roughly, right? 65,610 square miles, the land area. So look at our exclusive economic zone, how big it is. It is 517,000 square kilometers, right? So if you divide this exclusive economic zone from the land area, that's 65,000, that become 1 to 7.88, right? Which means we have, or we own, nearly 8 times maritime area or the sea area compared to our land, right? So we have 8 times larger sea than our land, right? So that is why it is so important, why we should learn this oceanography as a subject. At least we should learn about the ocean, right? It's 8 times our land area, right? Unfortunately, how many of our people know about this? It's very few people know that we own this kind of a huge marine environment, right? But how much this ocean contribute to our economy is very, very low, right? So that's why we have to talk about this particular subject, right? Now, the story is not finished yet, because in the same UN agreement, where that is the UNCLOS, or the law of the sea treaty, there is another statement. So that statement says the countries can claim, like we call the coastal nations, right? Not all the countries, any country bordering a sea, what we call the coastal nations, they can claim the seabed, right? Seabed area up to 1 kilometer thick sediment, right? Beyond 200 nautical miles, right? So this is the 200 miles nautical zone, sorry, 200 nautical miles exclusive economic zone. And beyond that, sediment thickness up to 1 kilometer, where you have the sediments up to 1 kilometer depth. If it is beyond that, up to that level, so that area can claim, right, as our own, right? You see that exclusive economic zone it's legally we can have it. You don't have to claim it. I mean, we don't you get it for free. But for this area, you have to make a claim to the UN that area up to 1 kilometer thickness sediment, right? Again, keep in mind this only the sediment, right? The sediment and any resources in that area up to 1 kilometer, that's area can be claimed as our own. You see, now Sri Lanka has mapped the up to 1 kilometer depth area like this. And we have make an application to the UN that this area, any resources up to 1 kilometer, this area is belong to Sri Lanka. So if we are to get that area, we will have or we will own sea area, at least the seabed, further 23 times the land area, right? So imagine how much resources that we have. අපි මෙහෙම ඉන්න ඕන කට්ටියක් නෙමෙයි. හරි. මෙච්චර මේ resources තියාගෙන හරි. We don't know even what is there. We don't know what is in this area. We haven't done any explorations, right? There may be huge resources in these areas, maybe oil, right? Other minerals, right? So there are a lot of things, right? So තේරුම් නැත්තම් ඔයගොල්ලන්ට අර මොකද්ද මේ 1 kilometer thickness කියන මෙන්න බලන්න මේ දැන් මේ තියෙන අර ආපහු මුහුදක පැත්තකින් අපි බැලුවොත් එහෙම කලින් දැක්කා වගේ ප්‍රොෆයිල් එක සයිඩ් එකෙන් බලන්න පුළුවන් නම් අපි මුහුද ටික මෙන්න මේ විදිහට තියෙන්නේ මුල හරිය continental shelf එක තියෙනවා මේ තියෙන continental shelf එක මේ චූටියට තියෙන continental shelf එක මේ හරිය එතනින් හට අර continental slope එක ඔය විදිහට ගිහිල්ලා මේක හරියට ඇඳලා නැහැ අතරම ඊට පස්සේ මෙන්න මේ ස්ලෝප් එකේ මේ මෙන්න මෙතෙන්ට එනවනේ මේක කියනවා මේ ස්ලෝප් එකේ ෆුට් එක පාදය හරි දැන් මේ සෙඩිමන්ට්ස් විශාල වශයෙන් මේ ඩිපොසිට් වෙලා තියෙනවා මේ පතුලේ මෙහෙම බලාගෙන ගියාම මේක මොකද මේ සෙඩිමන්ට් එන්න අඩු වෙලා යන්නේ මොකද මේ සෙඩිමන්ට් මට කියන්න බැරුණානේ මේ ඇත්තටම ඇයි මේ ක්ලේම් කරන්නේ මේ මොකද මේ සෙඩිමන්ට් ඇත්තටම මේ මුහුදේ තිබුණේව නෙමෙයි මේ සෙඩිමන්ට් ඒ රටෙන් ගහගෙන ගියේවා ඒක නිසා තමයි රටට ක්ලේම් කරන්න පුළුවන් මේ සෙඩිමන්ට්ස් වල තියෙන දේවල් අපේ රටෙන් ගියේවා මේවා අපේ කියලා ක්ලේම් කරන්න නැහැ නිසා ඉතින් මෙහෙම මේ බලන්න අඩු වෙලා ගිහිල්ලා එක තැනක් එනවා 1 කිලෝමීටර් දක්වා ඩෙප්ත් එක අඩු වෙන තැන එතනින් එහාට ඩෙප්ත් එක අඩුයි එතනින් එහාව ඉන්ටර්නැෂනල් වෝටර්ස් මෙන්න මේ දක්වා මේ ඒරියා එක අපි කියනවා ඒ රටට අයිති කියලා ක්ලේම් කරන්න පුළුවන්. හරි? මම හිතනවා ඔයගොල්ලන්ට තේරෙන්නේ නැති කියලා. තේරුම් නැත්නම් අහන්න. හැබැයි මේකේ මේ තව ක්‍රමයක් තියෙනවා මේක තීරණය කරන්න බැයි නම් from the foot of the slope මේ slope එකේ පාදේ ඉඳලා 60 nautical miles ගන්න පුළුවන් කියලා. but ඒක ෆෝමියුලා එකක්. but basic ෆෝමියුලා එක තමයි 1 kilometer sediment depth right make a තේරුම් නැත්නම් just forget about that what you need to know is that beyond the exclusive economic zone we can claim the seabed area only up to 1 kilometer depth sediment right so if you know that one that's more than enough right so that's how the law of the sea works right and the political boundaries are something like based on the national law right? Based on the national law we can divide the different zones for example the coastal zone of Sri Lanka right? So when you heard this term the coastal zone most people think that this is the beach area the coastal zone is the beach area but it is not it's actually based on the Coast Conservation Act, right? The Coast Conservation Act number 57 of 1981, right? So to forget about all these things, yes, you need to know is that there is something called the Coast Conservation Act. Based on that act, there is a definition for the coastal zone, right? That coastal zone definition is given in the image to your right, right? That is 2 kilometers from the mean the low water tide line right from here 2 kilometers and the 300 meters, right? 300 meters landward from the high tide, mean high tide line, right? So there is a two measures. Make a line dekak penna nene මේ තියෙන මෙන්න මේ line එක ඇත්තටම මේක තමයි mean low tide line එක හරි mean low tide line එක මේ තමයි mean high tide line එක right එතකොට මේක හරියටම පෙන්නලා නැහැ ඇත්තටම එතකොට මෙන්න මේ mean high tide එකේ ඉඳලා 300 meters ගොඩබිම පැත්තට low tide එකේ ඉඳලා 2 kilometers මුහුද පැත්තට මෙන්න මේ area එක තමයි සම්පූර්ණ මේ coastal zone කියලා කියන්නේ. And there is another thing, in case if it is like a river or estuary or bay, lagoon, whatever, connected to the sea, again, another 2 kilometers from the base, another 2 kilometers from the base. මේ 2 kilometers මේ ගඟ දිගේ මෙහෙම යන්නේ නැහැ. හරියටම මේ අපි හිතමු දැන් මෙතන ගඟක් නම් මේ මවුත් එක දිගේ ලයින් එකක් අඳහම මවුත් එකට පැරලා ඒකට ලම්බකව ලයින් එකක් අඳිනහම මේ තියෙන්නේ මෙන්න මේ වගේ ලයින් එකකට ගියාම 2 කිලෝමීටර් ලයින් එක මෙන්න මේකට ආйти මේ සම්පූර්ණ මේ ඒරියා එක coastal zone එකට ආйти right දල වශයෙන් 2 kilometers right and another 300 meters maybe 300 meters උත් මේක ඇතුළෙමයි තියෙන්නේ මෙන්න මේ ඒරියා එක තමයි coastal zone කියන්නේ ලංකාවේ හරි right මේක ටිකක් complicated right මේ ඕගොල්ලෝගේ level එකට මේවා මේ එහෙම ලොකුට දැනගන්න ඕනේ on your third year you will have a separate course called the coastal zone management where we will talk more detail right you just need to know the boundaries of the coastal zone of Sri Lanka right all right so that's the basic the zonation of marine environment for any coastal nation right so there can be a physical boundaries as well as the political boundaries that we decided internationally or national level right now the other things that we need to know about like a different marine and coastal not really the ecosystem but different landforms different features that you can see in the marine and coastal zone right so what are they like you know about the lagoons the bays the estuaries the peninsula the bays right likewise there are so many structures in the coastal zone right I'll just show some of the images around Sri Lanka you can see the in Jaffna we call is a peninsula අර්ධද්වීපය අහලා තියෙනව නේද යාපන අර්ධද්වීපය and the lagoons here you can see a lagoon for example Negombo lagoon and we have the estuaries as well right and a bay like in here in Trincomalee Bay so large bay and you can see the depths in the Negombo Bay you can see the 50 meters here and 500 meters 200 2000 2500 and 3000 meters you see how deep this area can be right just here about 50 meters but when you go to the outside of the bay just outside it can reach up to 3000 meters right so that's why I call the Trincomalee as a canyon නිකන් එකත් එක විදිහට අගාධයක් වගේ තියෙන්නේ so the depth increase quickly as you go right so and that's why the Trincomalee is called a very good natural harbor because it's very deep ස්වභාවිකයෙන්ම මේ ස්වභාවයෙන්ම deep area එක right and that is the enlarged image of the Trincomalee Bay and මේක මේ අර ස්වභාවික වරායක් උනෙත් ඒකින් සබන් මේක මේ ඉස්සර කාලේ සැටලයිට් එහෙම තිබුණේ නැහැ නේ මේක ඇතුළේ ඕන තරම් නැව් වලටම හැංගිලා තියෙන පුළුවන් විශේෂයෙන් මේ ඇතුළේ බලන්න මේ මොකලෝ ගිහිල්ලා නැතුව ඇති මේ ට්‍රින්කුමලයි වරාය ඇතුළේ බෝට්ටුවකින් ගියා නම් එහෙම හරි දවසක් විතර යන්න පුළුවන් මේ වගේ දිගේ විශාල ඒරියා එකක් and there is lot of areas right නැව් එහෙම ඕන තරම් හංගලා තියන්න තිබුණා ඒ කාලේ මේ වස්සට ගියාම කාටවත් පේන්නේ හරි දැන් නම් ඒව කරන්න බෑ සැටලයිට් තියෙන හින්දා right right so this is the image of the Trincomalee Bay and you can see the right, there's a lot of hiding places by that time right and along the coast there are a lot of other coastal structures like this you see it's not only the beaches but there are so many other features like some projections or some the land that run into the sea එතකොට මෙන්න මේ වගේ areas බලන්න මුහුද අයිනට යන මේ වගේ එකට අපි කියනවා headland එකක් කියලා headland දැන් මේ අපහු තියෙන මේ වචන ගොඩක් තියෙනවා මේ ඉගෙන ගන්න අපි බලමු හැමින් සැරේ now you know that the what is called the ප්‍රතිපාගාර කියලා අපි කියන්නේ හරි ප්‍රතිපාගාරයක් නැත්නම් lighthouse always a lighthouse in this kind of a headland හරි බලන්න ලංකාවේ කොහේ හරි ප්‍රතිපාගාරයක් තියෙනවා නම් මෙන්න වගේ headland එකක කොනේ තමයි හයි කරන්නේ මොකද ඒක මුහුදට නිරපු තැන හරි ඒ වගේ මේ තියෙන headlands ගොඩක් තැන් වල හරි and this is the connection between Sri Lanka and India not really the connection actually the separation from India from Sri Lanka right and this is the mana end of the mana මේ කොනට මොකද්ද කියන්නේ තලෙයි මන්නාරම කොනට අපි කියනවා තලෙයි මන්නාරම කියලා හරි මේ ඉන්දියාවේ මේ පැත්තෙන් තියෙනවා ධනුෂ්කොඩි මේ දක්වා මෙන්න මේ ඒරියා එකෙන් තමයි ලංකාව ඉන්දියාව වෙන්නේ හැබැයි බලන්න මේ සැටලයිට් ඉමේජ් එකක there's very shallow area between Sri Lanka and India you can see some even islands in between right පොඩි islands තියෙනවා මේ වගේ right islands 16ක් විතර තියෙනවා ඔයගොල්ලෝ මේ අයිනට කියලා බැලුවා නම් ඇත්තටම ඉන්දියාවේ කොන යාන්තමින් පේනවා හරි කිලෝමීටර් අවම දුර තියෙන කිලෝමීටර් 20 ගාණක් හරි ලංකාවේ ඉන්දියාව අතර මේ අඩුම දුර ඉතින් මේ islands මේවට යන්න පුළුවන් එක කාලයකට boat wheeling කොහොමද යන්න පුළුවන් it's very shallow area between Sri Lanka and India where you can have a look on this area right so that's the area between Sri Lanka and India now the one of the problem here you see this because of this is very shallow right only small boats can pass through here but not the ships right මේ Adams bridge එක මේ ආදම්ගේ පාලම අහලා තියෙනවා නේද ආදම්ගේ පාලම කියන්නේ මේක තමයි ඉස්සර කාලේ ලංකාව ඉන්දියාව අතර කනෙක්ෂන් එකක් තිබුණා කියන එක හරි එතකොට you can believe that one right ඉස්සර ඔයගොල්ලෝ දන්නේ නැති මේ කෝච්චිය ගියා මේ කොනටම යනකම් තාමත් තියෙනවා මේ එතන මේ ස්ටේෂන් එක සුද්ධ ප්ලෑන් කරේ ඇත්තටම ට්‍රේන් එකක් යවන්න මේ පැත්තට මේ ඉන්දියාවට යනකම් හැබැයි ඒක කෙරුන්නේ නැහැ කියන්නේ කනෙක්ට් කරලා මේක යවන්න හැදී හැබැයි ඊට පස්සේ මේක කනෙක්ට් කරේ බෝට්ටු වලින් හරි අපිට තාම මුකුත් කරන්නත් බැරුණා එකකට හොඳයි anyway so now the problem here is that there is no the big ship can't go through here now what happened because of that any ship that has to go from this part of India to the other part they have to go all the way around Sri Lanka to here right there is no any shipping route here only small boats can pass by right all the ships has to go around Sri Lanka to hari කියන්නේ මෙතන ඉඳන් මෙතෙන් යන්න උනත් they have to go all the way around Sri Lanka because because this is very shallow, right? That is very important. And that's why they have planned earlier a project to have a canal here, right? I don't know whether you have heard about, it's called the Setu Samudram project. අහලා තින්නේ නේද? Setu Samudram project කියලා එකක්, to have um, a canal here to pass the ship, right? But it didn't work somehow. You see here, that's all the ships has to go around Sri Lanka because of that issue, right? All right. Yeah, other than that, there are a lot of other very important features around Sri Lanka, right? I don't know any of you have been to the Trincomalee again. This is a well-known Hindu temple, right? Koneshwaram, ne? It's Humane. It's called the blowhole, right? Blowhole in Humana. That's very important coastal feature. Very few places around the world have this kind of areas, right? So the blowhole, likewise. There are so many other coastal structures, something like this. You see this kind of what we call the arches, right? And the many other features around the coastal zone of any country, any coastal nation, right? So actually, what are these and how they are formed, right? So that is very important, how they are formed. Actually, they are formed due to many different activities, right? But before that, I have another small video. Just spare a few minutes with me.
Hello friends, welcome to quickexam.com, and today we will learn difference between delta, estuary, lagoon, bay, gulf, state and peninsula. Many of time we confuse these definitions, so let's clarify today. Firstly, delta, how it is formed. When a river carrying sediments fall into sea. Here, the speed of river water gets slowed down and sediment gets starting depositing at the joining point. Here in left picture, a river is carrying sediments which start getting deposited at the connection point of lake and the river. Here sediments form layer by layer delta. And what is the main reason to form delta? You have listened, some rivers form delta and some rivers don't form delta. The main reason is that when a river carrying so much sediments that a wave or tide can't carry it all away. That means it can't wash it away from the shores of the sea, that result into delta. Some rivers carrying very less sediments, so they don't form delta because that sediments are washed away with the tides or the waves. So the main criteria to form delta is carrying so much sediments that waves or tides of sea are unable to wash it away from the shores. So next move to estuary. What is estuary? Let's go by definition. It is a partially enclosed coastal body of brackish water with one or more river or stream flowing into it and with the free connection with the open sea. See, what is estuary? When a freshwater river, that is shown by red arrows, water is coming from the river, and with the yellow arrow we have shown the water is coming from ocean. Both get mixed at some point. That result into brackish water which form estuary. Especially on the high tides, more water from the ocean get mixed with the river water and result into estuary. Next move to lagoons. What are lagoons? They are shallow water bodies which somehow got separated from the larger water bodies by reefs or barrier. See in this picture, in center there is a lagoon which is separated from the main water body with barrier. Next move to bay. What is bay? Bay is broad inlet of the sea where land curves inwards. See in this picture we have shown Bay of Bengal. Here land is curving inward. So next move to Gulf. It is a larger water body that is surrounded by land and it has narrow entrance. That means it has narrow opening with the main water body. So don't get confused with Gulf and Bay. Bay has a broader opening and Gulf has a narrow opening with the main water body. And next move to strait. Strait is a narrow waterway that connects two larger water bodies. See in the left picture, there is a narrow waterway between two larger water bodies. And in the right picture, we have shown Park Strait that connects Bay of Bengal with the Park Strait. Next move to peninsula. It is a piece of land that is covered from the three sides with water and one side of it is connected with the mainland. See in this picture, here peninsula is covered with the water from the three side and very small part of it is connected with the mainland. So this is called peninsula. Hope this clarified all your doubts about delta, estuary, bay, gulf, peninsula and strait.
So that's the bit of a funny Indian accent, right? Anyway, what you need is just to get the ideas, right? I couldn't find any better video on this, but just gave an basic idea about the some of the key features that you would see in the coastal zone, right? And that will lead to our next lecture, where we will talk about the coastal
Hello friends.
and marine uh, the geomorphological features. Um, and because of the different actions or different processes in the coastal zone, you will see different structures as I shown you before, right? So in the next lecture, we will discuss how these are formed. But I have a small exercise for you for the next week, right? Just read a little bit more on the different coastal structures. Like I have given some of these here, but like lagoons and just what you've seen in the video, like what is a delta. You have heard about this thing, but the clear definition, especially the estuary, the lagoon, it's very confusing for many still, right? But you need to have a very at least clear idea about, right? You don't have to memorize, but you, at least a clear idea about these different coastal structures, right? So that brings us to the end of today's lecture.